So the other day, I was scrolling through YouTube, and I stumbled across a channel I'd never seen before, which may surprise you when you consider its size. Many of you are probably familiar with this guy already, but I quite like it. Like, I'm surprised by the quality of this content and the know-how this person has, how caught up they are with what's going on and how we got here. Considering they seem to come from the mainstream media, the person in question is Ezra Klein, who hosts the Ezra Klein Show YouTube channel. And these videos are pretty well edited, well put together, well researched. And this one in particular, I saw the intro and immediately wrote down its title to save for me to watch on stream, because this really touches on some points I've wanted to talk about with you guys and hopefully reach a lot of people on, particularly within the left, for a while now. The video is called The Republican Party's NPC Problem and Ours. He is basically, fundamentally, he's basing this entire conversation on the very popular right-wing NPC meme. Let's watch. Obviously, we're not going to watch the whole thing, and there will be a link to the original video in the description of this when it goes out as its own thing. I'll also put it on the chat, or put it out in the chat when we finish watching our bit of the video. But I have a lot to say, particularly about the intro of this video, because I saw a lot of good stuff in the first bit. Let's watch.
Years back, the online right became enamored of a new epithet for liberals. NPC, short for
non-player character?
Non-playable character.
Non-player character.
What, you don't know about this? Do I get to tell you the NPC meme?
Yes.
This is the most important meme of our lifetime.
The term was lifted from video games, where an NPC refers to the computer-controlled characters that populate the game while you, the live player, make actual decisions.
What's really interesting is that the concept of... Isn't the NPC meme like that anti-autistic meme? No, it's not. Professional autist, it is not an anti-autistic meme. The concept of an NPC was one made up by 4chan. And the idea behind it was that the average person is kind of soulless and non-sentient. And in some ways, there is some valid analysis to this concept. The NPC meme has an essence of truth to it, which is what allowed it to gain any level of success in the first place, right? A lot of people, they come home from work, they watch some, like, slop television on cable, or now on streaming, I guess. They, like, couch rot, and they get up, they go to work, and they basically just follow whatever bandwagon picks them up. They go wherever the breeze blows them. They do what they're expected to do, and they just kind of zombie walk through life, you know? There are a lot of people like this. If you talk to a lot of people and you ask them, like, what do you do? Like, well, what do you do for fun? They'll tell you, like, there are people you'll meet that'll say, nothing. Like, nothing? Like, no, I just sit at home. Watch TV. It's like, that's it? Like, you don't have any hobbies or interests or anything? And they never have interesting conversation. They aren't interested in world building or movies or TV in, like, a story sense. They just have it on as they turn their brain off and just kind of veg out in front of the couch. Like, you could never be like, oh, what are you watching? Oh, I'm watching Game of Thrones. This shit is crazy. Oh, you want a theory craft? They'll never do that. It's always like, I'm just watching The Office. And they're just like, maybe they'll snack a bit and watch The Office. That is their 90% of their free time, is that, right? They cannot talk to you about the philosophy of what they're watching. They do not analyze it. They are the most boring people. And I'm not gonna lie, they are so common. It wouldn't surprise me if most people are that. At least in America, if most people are just these soulless, non-sentient automatons that you talk to and you're like, I can't imagine being you. Like, I cannot imagine being you, because if I did, I think I'd flip the switch up on myself. Like, I can't imagine it. Like, imagining it is like trying to conceive of like incomprehensible beings, some Lovecraftian shit, right? And so, dude, no. Listen, guys, if you disagree with this, then you have no fucking social life, or you're one of these people and you're getting offended. But a lot of people like this exist, and I think a lot of people who think themselves sentient, for lack of a better term, have noticed this, and they may even be annoyed by it, or at least they've noticed it. And 4chan invents this meme where the same people that are like that are supposedly the same people who support the current thing, and in their estimation, the current thing is progressive values and whatnot. Because at the time when this meme was getting popular, you did have a lot of cases of rainbow capitalism and faux progressive support from big corporations for the sake of making money. And so the idea was that if you deride the very non-self-sustaining, non-independent thought processes that might lead some people to believe in progressive ideas, you can deride all progressive people as NPCs. These essentially non-sentient, personality-less people who just go wherever the wind blows, and you falsely claim that the wind is blowing left, when in reality, clearly America is in a place right now that shows that a lot of people have not only fallen to the right, but fallen to become literal NPCs for the right, repeating the same dialogue trees over and over again, funnily enough. Every right-wing insult hilariously always ends up being hilarious projection about the nature of their movement. And this is always proven in the end, and it causes the right to enter a cultural down spiral until they're able to launch back up again off of some new cultural trend they're able to take control of. They do this every time. They're way faster to adapt and adopt new methods of communication before the left is. Every time. Always.
NPCs don't have minds of their own. They don't have agency, they're automatons. You might have seen these memes. Featureless gray faces, sometimes surrounded by liberal icons. Elon Musk loves...
And the hilarious thing about it is, they are the biggest NPCs. They really are. Like, how many times have you heard conservatives repeat something that you've heard? Like, how many times have you heard them say, facts don't care about your feelings, which is a saying that Ben Shapiro made up? How many times do you hear these people just repeat what you have heard word for word come from a popular conservative figure, and you know that they don't know that you know where they got that from, and they believe that you think they're being original, and they want you to think they're being original. Because fundamentally, a lot of their entire movement centers around accusing you of being an NPC who can't think for themselves, while simultaneously being desperate for you not to realize their talking points came from some multi-millionaire online figure.
Loved posting them. Liberals in this story thought what they were allowed to think, said what they were allowed to say.
And once you identify, it's like the Matrix. Like you see Agent Smith everywhere.
Believe all women. Refugees welcome.
I anticipate that's going to be the new NPC download.
Like any good insult, the NPC...
It's all about making derision towards the right look like not only like it's insane, not only like you're a crazy SJW if you don't agree with the right, but they're also incapable of thinking for yourself. That if you were capable of thinking for yourself, naturally you'd be a conservative, and that all people who disagree with them are part of an amorphous blob that any self-respecting person would not want to be a part of. It's essentially a movement of bullying people out of being left-wing. That is how the right does it. That's what they do. They bully people. They don't necessarily target individuals to bully out of being right-wing. It is that witnessing people being bullied for being left-wing makes those who see that feel bad and self-conscious about being left-wing, and they switch up their politics or start moving politically in large part to avoid that level of condescension, derision, or to feel like that insult doesn't apply to them. They don't want to be an NPC.
NPC meme served a dual purpose. It contains a kernel of truth about its target. We liberals can be conformist. We can be too afraid to offend. We can be overly deferential to institutions. We can be cowed by the in-group policing that we inflict on ourselves. And a little quick.
And what I like about this segment so much is he's not necessarily talking about the whole left. What he's talking about is the left that has been genuinely prominent for all this time. The Democrat mainstream media left. This is a New York Times opinion piece, by the way. So this is true. The average Democrat, like does not go online. They voted for Biden in the highest numbers of all time, but they are not super politically jacked in, but they are reasonable, and they tend to lean Democrat. They tend to be a registered Democrat. Those people are not caught up with what's going on. For the most part, they just vote blue no matter who. They don't follow politics, and they are the left-wing version of your average conservative griller guy who just votes Trump because it sounds good to him, right? There are left-wing equivalents to that. And a lot of them, if they consume any news media whatsoever, or they go out of their way to inform themselves from what's going on at all whatsoever, they go to like CNN or MSNBC, right? And I do feel there needs to be an acknowledgement of the fact that, to a degree, those people are not necessarily part of the problem, but they're not helping. Right now, the right is desperately trying to take hold of this nonstop 24/7 cultural party of being conservative that makes them so successful now, and the left is like, that's cringe. It's like, well, it is, but it's also working.
Quick to take up whatever the cause of the moment is. But the real purpose of the NPC insult was self-congratulation. The right was full of live players. You could see it in their willingness to offend.
What is a woman? Can you tell me that?
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
Their mistrust of institutions.
Are you a conspiracy theorist?
That is a pejorative, Senator, that's applied to me, mainly to keep me from asking difficult questions of powerful interests.
I'll say it again. Do your own research.
Their eagerness to debate what liberals would not even say out loud.
It depends on what you mean by equality.
Just shut up and obey.
Now,
I just.
To be fair, right-wingers stopped debating a while ago. Like, there was a time where right-wingers were willing to debate that, like, there was a whole, like, 2016 to 2018, 2019 era of conservatives being all about how lefties are too scared to debate. And then lefties started debating. We actually built a decent amount of left-wing debaters. Destiny, Vosh, as much as I have very big problems with them as people, their work is very good in many cases. Destiny can definitely do a good anal pile driving to a conservative, and for all of Vosh's faults and his lack of research at times, he is rhetorically quite talented, and this worked so effectively that with figures like that existing, conservatives had to stop saying leftists are too afraid to debate, or lefties and liberals are too afraid to debate, because then the immediate response was, why don't you debate Destiny? Why don't you debate Vosh? Because these are names with hundreds of thousands. Destiny might have millions of subs behind him, right? And so it's hard to say, like, there are no liberal debaters. They're too afraid to debate when those people are like, we want to debate. People are going to say, why not? And then they're going to get crushed. And so they stopped saying that. Back, like, in 2016 to 2019, where there was no progressive content space, they could get away with saying that. Because the only people who would come out to debate them were random college students.
Just reject that completely.
This became part of the Trumpist right self-definition. They were the nonconformists.
We are now the party of freedom and the party of speech.
The coalition that wasn't made of automatons.
In fact, we are just the party.
And that's what America needed. Live players. And here we are in 2025. And at this point, I'm willing to concede at least half the argument. American politics does have an NPC problem, possibly a lethal one, but it's not on the left. I can make a generous case for a lot of what the Trump administration is on some level trying to do, or at least saying they're trying to do. Government is too gummed up by process and protocol. It is too hard to hire and fire in the civil service.
Remember, all their bullshit has to be based on a fundamental truth. There has to be something real that people feel for this lie to take off, right? The idea that our federal tax dollars are not properly allocated and well spent has been a popular idea since the concept of taxes, okay? That is a very, very easy thing to target. If the economy is in a rough patch, especially after COVID, despite America having the best COVID recovery of any country in the developed world, doesn't matter. That's still a weak spot that you can target, and people will fall for it.
Even if I agree with the goals of many DEI programs, and I do, many of them don't achieve those goals. Some of them make the problems they seek to fix worse. There hasn't been rigor at looking at which is which and getting rid of the bad.
For those who don't know, DEI programs tend to disproportionately benefit wealthy white women, despite them coming from backgrounds and having a lot of benefits that they, right now at least, in our current environment, based on data that we have, they really don't need to benefit from DEI programs. They don't. Like, it's actually like wealthy, like trust fund baby white women are taking DEI spots from like inner city black women, for instance, right? Like, that is a thing that is happening because of certain DEI programs not being perfectly, like, when I say DEI, I mean like affirmative action, for instance, right? These are things that could be done better, right? They're not bad, but they could be done better, and the fact that they have flaws is something that could be harped on hard enough to the point where people can be polarized into hating that thing, especially when DEI is used to describe anything that people are culturally leaning against right now, right? Did a movie that people think is really bad just come out? Well, we just spent the last 4 years calling it DEI whenever that happens, you know? Bad movie, DEI. One of your favorite franchises is getting ruined, DEI. Your girlfriend won't fuck you, DEI. You know, like, every single problem in your life is DEI, I guess. And then people are like, oh yeah, I want to vote for the guy who wants to stop DEI.
Bad ones. There is actually a good argument for auditing USAID. We probably should convert more of what that agency spends to cash grants and direct public health support. And yes, how the government manages software procurement and bills and maintains digital services is hopelessly cumbersome. I was saying all this before the election too. All of it is well known, including among liberals. Many liberals have spent a lot of time trying to think about how to fix these problems. And so it is a genuine failure of Democrats that they did not put more energy into making the government faster and better and more responsive when they were in charge.
This is where I feel like we're missing the mark. I don't disagree with that statement. That's partially true. I mean, it's definitely true. But the main problem, objectively right now, is that it didn't matter how well the last incumbent administration did. It could have been Trump president for the last 4 years and doing everything that Biden did, and Trump would have lost if he tried to run again in this election, and like he would have suffered from the results of how the economy felt. The vibes would have been opposed to him as the incumbent. Right now, or I guess not necessarily that would be the thing that would happen, considering that Trump and his administration have done what actually matters, and that is control the information environment. Let's say Donald Trump served the 4 years as president that Biden did in the last 4 years, and he did everything that Biden did. Every single last thing that Biden did, just did the exact same presidency, it's just that Trump was in his position. You better believe the right-wing media would have ensured that every single accomplishment that he/Biden made would be known by the most Americans possible. Whether it be mainstream Fox News, like television cable news networks, or Twitter posts from popular accounts, or like Tucker Carlson or Alex Jones, everyone would have been making sure that every American knew that Trump, or in our reality, Biden, passed the Inflation Reduction Act and all the benefits that brought about, from American vets to American farmers to small American businesses. We would have all known about that. The infrastructure funding bill, the largest one in U.S. history that Biden signed, if Trump had done it, his entire media landscape would have ensured every American knew that in 5 years, when all of those roads are fixed up and all your sidewalks are replaced with brand new ones, that was because of him. Right? Everyone would have known about the capping of insulin prices if it had been Donald Trump and his media environment, the right-wing media environment, letting people know about it. Instead, we had the horrific media environment that the Democrats have right now, where the mainstream media has been repeatedly discredited by the right-wing psyops. What they do is genius, and it works so effectively. Let's say Trump does a bad thing. All right. The left wing, or I should say the mainstream media, really calls it out for what it is, and they speculate on how severe the consequences could be. Now, Teflon Don reliably gets away with everything, and so let's say it's a simple criminal allegation. If Donald Trump doesn't end up behind bars or locked up in handcuffs, the media will, or the right-wing media, will hardcore push the idea that the claim from the left was always that Donald Trump was going to go to prison if he was guilty, and that if he wasn't guilty, he would be let go. And then if he doesn't go to prison, then Donald Trump was not guilty. The media was constantly calling him an awful person or a felon or whatever, but he never went to prison. And so that's just the media being deranged about him again. They call the Mueller report stuff, they call it the Russiagate hoax. Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, every big popular conservative, they refer to it as the Russiagate hoax because Donald Trump himself did not go to prison despite so many that he worked with that helped him get into office directly going to prison after being exposed beyond a reasonable doubt in court, one of the highest courts in the land, that they colluded with the Russian government to help Trump get elected. They get away with these things because the left-wing media has been so discredited by the fact that what they do is so bad, but they never get severe consequences for it. The fact that they get away with it makes the media look like they were making a big deal out of nothing. Continuously discrediting the media to the point where now the American people hate the media. The one check for the U.S. government, the one check for the administration of the president, that is the media, that lets the American people know what's really going on, the American people have turned against the media. In the exact plans of the one guy whose job it is for the media to check. And people do not recognize the conflict of interest here. To be attacking the media on behalf of the president when it is the media's job to keep the government and the executive branch in check. On the American... The media works for the American people. The American people should not work for the president against the media. What a nightmare situation. What he's not realizing right now is that fundamentally, what the left is failing to do right now is... And what they failed to do in their last administration was not failing to do well enough. They did plenty well enough. They could have done nothing, and I think things would have been fine. What they didn't do was make sure the American people were counter-messaged about the misinfo, the negative misinfo from the right, and properly messaged about why Biden being president was good, why Kamala Harris's vice presidency was good, why you should re-elect her, you know? These were big failings. And then don't forget as well, all right, it was not a fair election, okay? Kamala Harris had 3 months to campaign, which sounds like a lot, but it's not as much as Trump had. Trump's technically had like 12, almost 10 years to campaign at this point, while Kamala had 3 months. A lot of Democrats even felt burned by the fact that Kamala Harris basically replaced Biden without a democratic process. Remember, Biden won the nomination in the primary very hard. A lot of those primary voters were probably salty Biden got ousted and someone else was undemocratically appointed. Like, people can complain about Bernie losing the primary, but the fact that those same people champion Biden getting ousted and his vice president undemocratically appointed 3 months out from the election is wild. That people will manufacture a narrative about Bernie getting the election stolen from him in the primaries, see that literally happen to Biden, and then say, well, that was good, though, because it was Biden. It really goes to show that for the right, they've got a cult around their guy. They have a cult of personality around Trump, and that is what works for them. That is what actually succeeds in getting your people in power in a country that is so vain and focused on following people, following celebrities, following a billionaire. Who is your favorite billionaire? Is it Elon? Is it Bezos? Who's your favorite crypto bro? You know, like, people love to idolize and follow those that are more successful than them in America. Someone like Trump naturally attracts them because he lies to them about his success, about who he is, and how great and how much he loves America, right? Donald Trump loves American. I'm sure he does, Atreus.
How the hell did the Biden administration pass $42 billion for broadband in 2021?
Let us agree, in the 21st century in America, high-speed internet is not a luxury, it is a necessity.
And have basically nothing to show for it by November of 2024.
You want to know why? I imagine he gets into it a little later. Republicans blocked it. And also, these bills, to be very clear, when Congress approves funding for these bills, and the president tries to allocate this money, it's not like, boom, all right, all the federal funding has been transferred to the bank account for this project. time to get people on that job. That's not how it works. It's that over the course of a certain amount of time, this amount of money must be allocated from the federal budget, pieces of it over the course of each year over this amount of time. And once the money has all been, allocated, not even once it's all been allocated, they'll just start using it as they go. But by the time that time period has been done, most of the project should be done, but all of the money for the project will have been spent, or allocated, I should say. In the case of the broadband program, not even all of the money has been allocated yet. This isn't supposed to go into effect until like 2030 or 2040 or something like that. But Donald Trump is obviously going to shut this down, just like he did the EV thing, the electric vehicle charger thing, which I'm sure he's going to bring up as well, because that was another big talking point of like, here's a bill that nothing ever got done about, because, and this is a big problem, the average American, this guy does, he knows, but the average American does not know the process for federal funding going to a project like this.
That is a Wawa station back there behind me. They recently got $733,000 to build an EV charging station. Unfortunately, all you see right now are gas pumps, though.
How did they get $7.5 billion for electric vehicle chargers, but only build a few hundred of them by the end of their term?
It seems that everything is going a little slower than anybody thought.
Why is it all so...
It's like, it really is depressing, the fact that, like, the government has always been a slow and deliberate thing, because if you're going to, like, we don't want our government to not be slow, deliberate, and careful, right? Like, we don't want the government to operate in such a way, we don't want it to operate like a tech company. We don't want it to move fast and break things, all right? Because then one fuck up can lead to a catastrophic spiral for the entire country. Atreus, your questions are stupid and unrelated to the conversation.
Slow. Democrats became champions of a government that often didn't work. And that's part of the reason Trump won. Not the only reason, not the biggest reason, it's not as important as the price of eggs. But when people feel the government isn't working, the party promising change beats a party rallying in defense. When Elon Musk says that the election gave...
That's partially true, but it's not just that. Like, people are so hooked and fixated on what the messaging from the Republicans was, and not on how they got that messaging out, not the scale of it. That, like, what the messaging wasn't really all that important. It was the scale that mattered. The right had a much larger scale of propaganda and messaging and information spreading than the left could even dream of, because the right embraced the internet and takes the internet seriously. Let's be real. The left does not take the internet seriously in the same way the right does. Like, they just don't. They don't. Like, I watch, like, a CNN clip, and it'll be fuzzy, blurry, shaky, and buggy, and low quality. Meanwhile, I'll watch a Fox News clip, and it'll be like a Fox News local channel, and it'll have, like, dedicated editors that'll have worked to cut the news segment together in the most, like, internet-friendly way possible. They upload YouTube shorts. They upload shorts that go viral with tens of millions of views, that they have editor teams that know how to use the YouTube algorithm and make their videos go viral and reach a wide audience. They use Twitter, and they go massively viral on there because they pay Elon, and they say what the site rewards you to say now. The scale that their messaging reaches is far more important than what their messaging actually was. Let's be honest.
Republicans a mandate for reform? He's not totally wrong.
You couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. To have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We've won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major...
This is also gaslighting, by the way, and it's meant to demoralize progressives, this idea that there's never been a bigger sign from the American people if they want, like, a majority of them want conservatism. They want what Trump wants. They've won every sector of the government, but only narrowly. Trump did not win in a landslide, not with the popular vote even. Trump did not, or with the Electoral College. Trump slimly won the election. They slimly won the House. They slimly won the, I think they won Congress fairly confidently, but like most of these areas, they won very slimly by like 1 or 2 seats. And yet they claim that this is like a loud, proud majority of Americans calling for, like vast majority of Americans calling for so-and-so. And yet under Biden, supposedly everything he tried to do was against the will of the people, despite winning more votes than any president has ever won.
Government reform. There should be no doubt about that.
But look at how Musk justifies that mandate. The proof is that Republicans control the House and the Senate. So why not write some bills? Sure, Republican majorities are narrow, but bipartisanship here, it wasn't out of the question. Democrats were defeated and ready to deal. Their own voters wanted them to deal. A January poll by CBS and YouGov found that 54% of Democrats wanted their congressional representatives to work with the Trump administration. 1 month later, February, and now 65% want all-out opposition. That is a lot of political capital the Trump administration burnt in just 1 month.
Yeah.
And for what? I've covered Washington for decades now. There's gray in this beard. If this was about policy, Trump and his team would have gone through Congress. They could have crafted much larger reforms using a wider set of powers, and they wouldn't be facing down the courts in the way they are now. But what they wanted wasn't policy. They didn't want to go line by line through USAID and figure out what worked and what didn't. They didn't want to think through new civil service regulations, balancing ethics and independence and responsiveness. What they wanted was power. What Donald Trump wanted was power. And so they're trying to remake our system of government, not our laws. And they've identified a weak point in the system, and now they're trying to drive a flaming Cybertruck through it. That weak point is Congress. And the reason the Trump administration might succeed in taking Congress's power is that they have turned congressional Republicans into NPCs.
The Supreme Court has handed their power over to Trump. Congress is next. I think it already happened. Didn't Congress basically already just hand over, like the Republican Congress already basically handed over, all say to Trump? Like Trump can basically just do anything now without Congress's approval. Like he's just been doing that now, right? Yeah. No, it's fucked, dude.
The vulnerability in the system here goes way back. In Federalist 51, James Madison set out the challenge he and his colleagues faced in writing the Constitution. He said, "In framing a government, which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself." So how does a government control itself? The founders' idea was that it controls itself through internal competition between independent branches, each of which wants to protect its own power. Ambition must be made to counteract ambition, Madison wrote. But one branch was unquestionably designed to be stronger than the others. Congress controls the money. Congress can overturn presidential vetoes. Congress can impeach federal judges, cabinet officers, and the president. Why was Congress made so strong? Because Congress reflects a second, and in some ways the more important and enduring form of fracture the founders imagined.
Well, basically, Congress is the best representative of the majority of the American people, as best as, like, well, as he said, as the founders could understand, right? That's why the Electoral College exists. The idea was that, based on how they understood things at the time, the interests of rural Americans and the interests of city Americans were very different. Like, extremely so. To the point where, like, if the government went the way of, like, the Americans who lived in the city, and all, like, politicians wanted to, like, legislate around life that way, living in the countryside, farming, many things like that were said to, or were thought to be literally impossible to care about. Like, a lot of people living rurally would be forgotten, while politicians would basically focus only on the city because that's where the people who voted for them live, right? You wouldn't get presidents that cared anything about rural areas because there would be so few votes from there. Who the fuck cares? Just focus on the cities, only care about the cities. That's where all the votes are. Who gives a fuck? And you know, there's a lot of rural living Americans, but they're spread out. They don't make up that many of number, but they did matter a lot for America, especially early on. And the idea was they were trying to balance things out, that these rural Americans should not be forgotten and lack representation in our government, especially since they were being taxed. No taxation without representation, right? They wouldn't lack representation in our government, and they wouldn't have no voice. The idea behind the Electoral College was that their votes would be weighed more in order to level out the amount of sway that population has on certain areas. Meanwhile, like, that's why we don't just go off of the popular vote, because in their mindset way back in the day, they thought this would lead to only only politicians who care about the city winning. Meanwhile, or like cities winning. Meanwhile, Congress exists so that individual areas are able to elect a representative that they can call if they want to put forward, like, hey, there's a problem in your district. You need to acknowledge this. You need to put something forward for some federal funds to go into fixing this problem or something. And let's say there's going to be a potential, Congress gives approval for starting a war, for instance. They have to approve the declaration of war under normal circumstances. The idea is that Congress is the most representative democratic idea in all of the American government. That all these little areas are sliced up and given their own representative. You can call them or mail them, directly contact them and influence them, and they represent you because they want to hold your vote and keep getting your vote in Congress. Donald Trump being able to supersede that is you losing the most direct influence you had on what happens in our federal government. Now Trump does whatever the fuck he wants. You voted for him once. If you ever regret that, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Whatever happens now, you voted for him. He's got the approval he needed. There's no going back now. But when it comes to Congress people, you know, you can write them letters. If they aren't doing a good job, they've got, like, what, 2 years, 3 years before they come up for re-election again? And so you just vote them out for someone who will actually listen to you. It's going to be a lot more of a community thing. You might know the person personally, and that's where they live most likely. They have to live there in order to run for Congress there. So they are someone in your community that if they fuck you over, they're not all the way on the other side of the country. There's someone who has to then shop at your supermarkets, drive down your local streets. The idea of essentially neutering Congress is blatantly anti-American. And it's not just anti-American in the America as a concept sense, it's anti-Americans, as in the people of America. It is against you. You are losing your ability to talk to your congressperson, tell them this is what I'm concerned about. Can you bring this to the attention of the federal government? You lose that right. You've lost that power. It's a downright tragedy. The guy that you might have just decided to vote for once now gets all the say, and you get none, unless he continues to do what you want him to do. And if he ever stops doing it, that's tough luck. Even if you like Trump, that should concern you. If you are not literally a cultist for Trump, that should concern you. Because Trump, if you are so confident that Trump will never do something that you disagree with, then you just worship the guy. It's not about how great Trump is. It's about the fact that he's Trump, and because he's Trump, he must be great. It's cognitive dissonance, bro. Anyway, I think I have that's really all I have to say about this at the end of the day. My primary goal is to get across to people that we need to focus on the scale and reach of our messaging. The messaging itself and what that messaging is does matter, but I think there's too much of a hyperfixation on where the left is failing in what they're saying, and less on how the left is failing by not saying enough to enough people. You know what I mean? People are almost there, but I'm glad there's a big conversation right now about how we got here and how we can prevent this from happening again, how the left can catch up with the times and start to become competitive again in politics. Makes me happy. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, or in any way enjoyable, then please consider leaving a like, especially if you're watching this live. But even if you're watching it as a video, every single like and comment really helps a lot. Every thumbs up and comment on every new upload boosts the channel and the algorithm, as does those things on my streams. Really do appreciate it. It's totally free, so thank you. And of course, if you want to see more from me on YouTube, you can subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And if you want to see more from me on other platforms, you can follow my social medias linked down below in the description, or you can directly support me if you want to help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or you can support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or you can buy some dope Xander Hall custom merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless, though, of how you support me, thank you so much for watching as always, and have a good one.